Hello and welcome to the third section of the three ecosystems vocabulary sets. In this set, we're going to be covering the big idea processes for the unit. These are going to be mainly chemical and energy related to these processes that you may have heard of before. So to start with, make sure that these words are all inside of your vocabulary document. Make sure that you've written down if you've seen the word before or not and what you think the word means. Use your definitions from 7th grade as a starting point for photosynthesis and cellular respiration. If you remember them, use the word parts, word associations, anything that you can think of related to these words, how they've been used in the past, maybe in the energy unit or in the hydrosphere unit with nutrients. In order to get yourself a basis for a definition so that we're not going into this cold. Do not Google these in advance. These will give you some very complex answers that we do not need. We need to make sure that we keep a narrow focus to what 8th graders need for these so that you have an 8th grade appropriate understanding of these processes. So to start with, we have trophic levels. So trophic levels are going to be what part of the food chain an organism is going to exist in. And one thing that you need to keep in mind is that all of the energy in our ecosystem is ultimately coming from the sun. The sun is going to provide energy to plants. The plants are going to use that energy to convert carbon dioxide and water into sugar, into glucose. That they can use as an energy source. So the energy source for the ecosystem is the sun, and then as the producers are eaten by consumers, most of that energy that exists inside of those plants is lost to heat and digestion, other things in order to use that resource. A lot of it is lost, and so every step up, every trophic level up, you're losing 90% of the energy. So it's going from 100 to 10% remaining, 10 to 1, 1 to 1/10, then 1/10 to 100th. So that energy each step of the way is lost as heat, and that could be just heat from metabolism, that could be heat from digestion, that's going to be heat from chemical processes. But when we're thinking about trophic levels, we're going to be thinking about the energy as it transfers from producers to consumers. Primary consumers would be herbivores, then maybe your omnivores and carnivores, apex predators at the top of the trophic level pyramid. Along with that energy movement, we're going to have matter movement. One type of matter that we need to keep in mind is going to be toxins. So the amount of pollutants, the amount of things that we don't want to have in our food is going to accumulate as you move up the food chain. For example, and this is in, I think, French, but the idea is accurate. So we have mercury, which is a chemical that we don't want to have. And you have some tiny, tiny bit of mercury in the water. That mercury is going to be absorbed by phytoplankton as they form in the water, by the zooplankton, and those are going to be consumed by the krill. Krill are tiny little shrimps, and those little shrimps are going to have very, very slightly more toxins in them than each of the individual planktons that they consumed. Now those krill, they get consumed by the bluefish, and the bluefish's level of toxins is going to be higher than the krill. And then the orange fish is going to eat the bluefish, which has already concentrated the toxins. And so maybe the orange fish has 3 or 4 bluefish. And now it has the toxins from those 3 or 4 bluefish inside of it. And then this gray fish is going to eat 3 or 4 orange fish. And so all the toxins from each of those individual fish are now inside this gray fish. But inside this gray fish are also all the toxins from all the food that the orange fish had eaten. and all the food that the bluefish had eaten, and all the food that the krill had eaten. Those toxins accumulate and accumulate and accumulate. So if you consume organisms that are higher order or higher trophic level organisms, then you need to keep in mind that those organisms are also going to have a higher level of contaminants, of potential toxins and poisons inside their muscle and fat tissue, which is where those toxins and poisons end up getting stored because your body doesn't know what to do with them otherwise. So that's bioaccumulation. Now, two things that we don't need to worry about. These are going to be the natural order processes that aren't going to harm us. For first, photosynthesis and cellular respiration. So energy from the sun goes into the plants, is the energy source where the chloroplasts are going to be able to use the energy from the sun to combine carbon dioxide and water and form sugar. That sugar is going to be accumulated inside of the plant material. That plant material is going to be eaten by some sort of herbivore. Inside that herbivore, you're going to have a whole bunch of mitochondria. Those mitochondria are going to absorb sugar, and then they'll also absorb oxygen. They'll use that oxygen to release the energy that's stored in the sugar so that the cells can function. And that also releases some carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide is going to be cycled right back around into the plant. Now, the important thing for photosynthesis and cellular respiration in ecosystems is that this is going to be how energy moves through the ecosystem from the sun into food and then through the food through the ecosystem. It's also going to be how carbon moves through the ecosystem. Carbon dioxide in the air becomes carbon dioxide in plants, which turns into sugars that the plants are storing, which turns into sugars and other tissues inside of the animals, and then on until it's released back into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. So that's photosynthesis and cellular respiration. Photosynthesis is going to be forming the food. Cellular respiration breaks it apart to release the energy. Nitrogen fixation is our last one, and this one is definitely new to everybody. The problem first of all, we need nitrogen because nitrogen is going to be the element that makes it so that we can form proteins. The building block for proteins are these things called amino acids. Amino acids are going to have carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, just like carbohydrates, just like lipids. But amino acids also have nitrogen. Now, the nitrogen inside of the amino acids can't just exist as nitrogen. Nothing can really do much with nitrogen. And so that nitrogen has to get turned into nitrates. And the way that that happens is in the shallow soil, there's going to be these bacteria that are called nitrogen-fixing bacteria. And what they do is they fix the nitrogen that we can't use by turning it into nitrate that the plants can use. Plants are going to be able to use the nitrate to form amino acids. So those nitrates are assembled into proteins inside of the plant material, and then those amino acids can be rearranged into a gajillion different protein structures inside of whatever plant or whatever animals eat those plants or eat the animals that ate the plants. All of the proteins that exist had to first be formed inside of plants and then cycled through the ecosystem and consumed by consumers like us, which allowed us to form them into whatever proteins we need inside of our cells, inside the rough endoplasmic reticulum, assembled using instructions given by RNA attached to ribosomes. If you want to go down to the cellular level of what is happening there, but the nitrogen fixation makes it all possible. You've got to get the nitrogen gas out of the atmosphere, turning it into nitrate in the soil. You do that through nitrogen fixation. Nitrogen fixation requires nitrogen-fixing bacteria. That's a short list of words with big, long explanations. Make sure that you're filling in that last column in your spreadsheet about why these terms are important. And that concludes your vocabulary for the ecosystems unit. I hope that you have a good rest of the unit in science.